And we are live.
We are live. Welcome. This is episode 42 of Spoken
42.
Openness. 42. And
Okay, here we go.
here we go. Do we have a quotey on this one?
We do. We have a quote. And this quote was imagined, pronounced, and distributed by Mr. Terence McKenna.
Terence.
He was a Frenchman,
Yep.
and he lived in the woods almost his whole life.
Yep.
The northern French woods.
Yep.
And anyway, I digress.
What did he say?
The quote is, the problem is not to find the answer, it's to face the answer.
Ugh.
The problem is not to find the answer,
Not the problem.
it is to face the
Face it.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I love
this
this.
could go many ways, in many realms,
Yeah.
in many areas of life, have different meaning depending on the context, but you can also destroy all of that and say, no, Mr. Terence is speaking specifically about this thing.
Yep.
I guess it's up to both of us to make the best out of whatever Mr. McKenna left,
Agreed.
whatever he left for us to play with.
It's not for us to read the quote. It's up to us to face the quote.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
I think
We already found the quote though, so
yeah. So a big distinction that we need to figure out here is what would it mean to face something? What does that mean? And and finding the answer implies that there's a part of you that agrees that it's the answer. There's a part of you that it's not. I think that implies that it's not just, oh, you've seen something that is the answer and you may not notice it, and it's just and you happen to come across it and it is the answer, but you haven't acknowledged it. I think it implies that no, there's a part of you that has acknowledged it, whatever it may be, but there's a larger part of you that doesn't want to, and this is where the facing conversation comes in. And let me see, I feel like that would imply you've seen the information, you've acknowledged that you think that it is coherent and a proper description of reality and answering the question or the problem.
yeah.
But that you are unwilling to integrate it into your framework of reality or current understandings, or to really build it in because why? Because it's too it will shake up your foundations. It's too what do you think are some of the reasons?
Similar to what we discussed when we talked about revisiting old books or books you've read in different stages of your life or of your knowledge process, etc. And
the KP.
Exactly, and this whole thing about encountering information as we go through life is you can't escape from it. Information will find you, or you'll find information in many different formats, many different mediums. And
more so, would you say more so now than ever because of just your phone, your TV, your computer,
I would say so.
Advertising?
Would you say so?
Yeah, I think it's inescapable.
Yeah, inescapable. And there's in many ways an over a saturation of information. There's like too much to handle.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the problem is not to find the answer. I mean, the answer has always been there. Some people, I mean, some schools of thought claim that the answers are always within you, and
Right.
all you have to do is really remember the answer or unblock whatever is preventing you from.
Right. And I would say that those answers, I think we should separate, and this can kind of create a divergence in where we could take this.
Yeah.
But I believe that that notion in spiritual or religious traditions that are discussing that the answer has always been within you, I think that that is in relation to the question that Alan Watts puts it in as of who you are, or realize who you are, and that the answers mostly are that fundamentally it's through a dissolving of the names, identities, things that you have built upon yourself, that your ego has built upon yourself, and by peeling back those layers, you'll uncover the truth, which has always been there, which is something that you can experience and feel, which is some sort of fundamental felt presence of reality of your existence. It's like a feeling of just raw existence, and that
Nice.
that is separate, I think, maybe in conversation to answers about phenomena or events or things in the world. I
Yeah.
don't think things that have to do with after those layers have already been accepted, and because you're living in the world with all of those layers fully functioning. And so within that world, you are somebody. There's information about the world that we inhabit in the physical world, and there is claims.
Yeah.
I almost wanted to say that I agree that there's so much more information that people are confronted with these days. But I also felt the urge to say or make a claim that within that information, you're also just coming across infinite, like way more claims
Sure.
in itself.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. So not all the information is equal. I'm following. Right? I mean, there's claims, and then there's like all sorts of opinionated
even
facts.
even advertising is a claim.
No, it's the king of claims, or the queen
Yeah.
of claims, for sure.
And due to like Bernays' whole thing, the claim is often you will be better if you have this, or you will feel better. Like, even those types of claims you're confronted with all the time through advertising.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the different categories of information that we can't avoid, or at least it is harder to avoid being confronted with these days? There's
Yeah. You can't avoid. You can't avoid people throwing arrows at you. You can only shield or escape, ignore.
what are the
Right?
forms of arrows? So some of
Got
the
it.
arrows is advertising.
Advertising, or any sort of public, what is it, like,
Public
yeah,
relations stuff.
public press conference.
Yeah.
That's I mean, that anyone
Yeah.
can hold their own public
Yeah.
press conference whenever they want to.
Yeah.
That's something I actually would love to explore. We explored some of that when we did some random busking in Vancouver
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
while back. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I don't know, just the fact that we can actually still go stand up at a like any public space, and you're allowed to speak your mind freely. You're allowed to be the prophet. That's not a crime.
You'll mostly be the crazy guy on the corner
Yes, but is that
ranting
yeah,
about something.
yeah.
But
Depending
yeah,
on
and
your social circles, social media wouldn't be so different.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's true. So there's like advertising that's out there that's you're
Advertising,
confronted with.
yeah.
There is news media that you're confronted with that's making claims about reality and events
Well,
that are happening.
the problem is that I put news media in the same category as advertising, although of course it's not. I mean,
No,
but
yeah, I think the notion of what's interconnected and how things influence each other. I mean, that's an interesting conversation, but like
they are
they
separate.
are separate, right?
Agree.
Like one of them is telling you to buy something, the other one is telling you what's happening. They're making claims about what events are
I mean,
happening.
I hope it actually was that way in most cases, right? Because what in pop I don't want to say popular, because I mean what used to be mainstream media is not really that much popular anymore from even independent creators in many cases, but
Yeah. I think
let's
they're still
say
counting airport numbers because like
hmm
you have news networks that are played at airports all day. And I'm pretty sure even though there's
nice.
been a massive drop off in
hmm
viewership of like news on TV, I think even with that small number, I think a large part of that is like airports and like places that are
Yeah,
playing that. Yeah,
restaurants,
I think
etc.
that's part of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes, I mean, all I wanted to say is their content, their news content,
Yes.
is telling you to buy something, which is their appreciated
I see
viewership
what you're
throughout the time.
saying.
All they want to do is retain your attention, really, and tell you what you want to hear in most cases. It's a product. It's how
Yes.
is it not a product?
Yes,
Of course,
yes.
yes.
No, I agree. I agree. But it's not advertising.
It's not
Like
the
I'm
same
just saying
category. Yes,
advertising
that's
in a
why.
category of like having a big like one company name, one message to get
Yes,
a
sir.
group of people to buy the thing, a strategically implemented
Mm-hmm.
image or video. Um, but yeah, it's true. Things you have to look at news and you have to look at TV shows. I mean, if that's the vibe you're going with, like you have to look at TV shows are just you can have the interpretation that TV shows are solely there to hold your attention until the advertisements, and that
Yeah.
the viewership of those TV shows are are mainly used as a metric to convince the television networks that they are providing them with enough eyes so that they can show the advertising companies that put the advertisements like, hey, there's this many people that are going to maybe make it to the commercial
Yes,
break.
yes, yes, yes. They
Yes.
can
Yeah.
even track people's point of focus in the screen. They used to they used to put cameras on movie theaters so that they could track the eyeball movement of
Nice.
people.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
there's I've seen these clips of entire movies where there's like a circle going around the screen, which is the average
What are
attention
you looking
spot,
at?
the average attention spot of the entire audience, right? What most people are looking at. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy because they're advertising clothes, they're advertising products, gadgets, their advertising.
Yeah.
Mainly they're advertising
happiness
their
is what they're.
worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're advertising happiness. Or trying to convince
They're
you
advertising drama. That's why we have the happy face and the not happy face. Right? It's that duality. Happiness, drama, chaos, and we're addicted to it. The conflict.
Yeah.
The conflict and then the catharsis.
And some would say that the number one way to maintain our attention is through the use of the most powerful narrative structure of all time, which is the archetypal hero's journey and these time-old story structures that people seem to inherently gravitate towards viscerally more than anything else. I guess the other thing you could do that with is through fear, or through conflict, like you said, which we are severely drawn to. But to go, so here's the thing. So we're confronted with all this information all the time. Different forms of information.
All sorts of information. Way too many different ways and sorts and variables of information.
Yeah.
Many of them you don't want to see because then you can't unsee, and just stay away from those.
I'm trying to think of on a personal level things that you notice about your behavior or about yourself. If you sit down and you really ask yourself what are some drawbacks in your character or in your habits, or I could be doing this more, I could be doing this more. You know what it is.
I think this is what they are advertising.
And but just to finish my thought, I'm trying to think of implementing the quote on a personal level. Though that's information that you know and you recognize is an answer. But you don't want to face it, because facing it means you got to change yourself, and that's scary and stressful and all this stuff. That's on a personal level. And then on the external level, I guess it's like you're confronted with information through all these different sources of claims, so on and so forth. And if there are things that you will come across in the external sphere that you will notice and that you won't want to face, because, and I'll pass the ball to you, is the reason you don't want to face it the same in those two categories. One, the external information that you agree and acknowledge is correct, but for some reason you don't want to implement it, and the phenomena in a personal level of, I notice some things that I know are true that could change, but I don't want to face it.
What's the difference? I don't notice the difference between the former and the latter.
All right, so to try to connect this back to the quote, I'm thinking about this, and maybe this isn't a playground that's helpful to get into, but let's say that there's two places that you can confront a piece of information, and there's way more, but let's make it about internal and external in some arbitrary sense, and I don't know why that just seems to be what I feel like.
Sure. Let's stick to those.
Okay. So on a personal level, you confront information from yourself. It's not an external thing that you've read or seen. It's something that you know, that you think from yourself, where you can be like, okay, here's something I know about, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing this.
Yeah.
And that's something that you recognize, but you don't face.
Sometimes.
For a variety of reasons. And then, sometimes. Yeah. And then externally, you confront things, or you hold things that you know or that you acknowledge are true, but then you don't face those pieces of information in the same way. And my question is, are both of those the same phenomena of basically comfort? Basically comfort. Like, I am the way that I am, and if I acknowledge this external thing or if I acknowledge this internal thing, it means something has to change. I either have to really work on my understanding of how this relates to other parts of my frameworks of reality, or I have to drastically change my habit, or what are your thoughts on that?
I actually see the polarity in terms of like answers, like the quote is referring to. Like there's the I mean, information is out there. You'll encounter the answer, but what are you gonna do with it? You are faced with a question to face the answer or to ignore it. And then the duality to that in my understanding right now in this convo is
yes, sir.
You find triggers or the loaded word here would be temptations, but I feel like trigger is lighter, kind of has like a more technical application. But basically you find things that tell you, do this, think this, eat this, feel these.
Yes.
And those triggers also give you options, also give you the necessity to face a question. Do you face the trigger? Or do you embrace it? And then, there's a whole 3-hour conversation to be had on delayed gratification and all of that. But basically, there's the polarity in my it's just the answers versus triggers, and it's mostly triggers. No, not really. I mean, that's maybe what we tend to acknowledge the triggers way more, and we as a society, we are definitely way more inclined to satisfy addictive behavior than to stick to behavior that benefits growth and overall well-being.
And you're relating addictive behavior to immediate gratification?
For sure, yes, absolutely.
I think, and maybe I can relate I was just thinking about maybe one of the biggest ones. One of the biggest pieces of information is that I don't think people face, and I think we could think of many of these examples, but like most people in school and everywhere, you learn that we live in an infinite universe and that everything came into existence from nothing, and that we are spinning this super fast and we're going so and so speed around the sun, and all this stuff is happening. Yeah. And that you acknowledge the facts about, like, I believe that, we're this tiny planet in the galaxy, in the universe that is most likely infinite. But nobody acts like that.
What does that mean? Nobody acts like that. What do we act like?
We act like the only thing that you act like we have to, but we act like everything means something. We act like everything means something. We act like our actions are really important and we're really worried about what happens tomorrow, and oh, I got this thing over there, and I have to do this thing next year, and oh, I really hope that this happens. But that is like if you actually confronted the idea that we're in infinity, and
I don't think so.
you don't think so? I mean, yeah, and now I'm implying, but I guess okay. Take away the fact that you would behave
For many
differently.
people, yes, I think so. For many people, yes. I mean, I think
Okay,
what
I'm
you're...
confusing. I'm confusing profundity of reality with facing it.
Dude, I think it's one of the basic... what am I even saying here? I think most atheists are confused about this. I don't think the word is confusion even. I mean,
Yeah, and
there's a
don't say
debate to
most.
have.
Don't
And
say
I don't...
most,
Yes.
and don't.
Yes.
Yeah, just
Right.
yeah.
I
What?
say, I think there's a big debate about this.
Don't say what. There's a big
Yes.
debate. Just what is the
Yes.
thing?
The thing is, the vastness of space
Yeah,
does not equal meaninglessness.
got it. Yes, because then there's the idea that the vastness is this beautiful wonder, and that the fact that through chance all of these things emerged and that we're here is this beautiful, crazy result of evolutionary pressure and time, and that all of those things are extraordinarily beautiful and profound, and
Sure,
that
yeah.
it's not meaningless, it's actually infinitely meaningful that we happened to reach a place of consciousness at this stage to even recognize infinity.
And what is infinity? Then if you get into that, that's also gets into a lot of spiritual, metaphysical, and mathematical context. And so, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with mathematics, you can have amazing debates about the existence of a God, let's say.
Yeah. I'm trying to relate it to something else from another McKenna thing, which is the idea that, like, the truth is, and here's the truth, is that nobody knows what's happening.
For sure, nobody really
Like
knows.
a big,
No one individual.
not no one individual, but
And
also
not,
like
not the
nobody,
collective either. Yeah.
nobody knows what's happened, what did happen, where we are, what's gonna happen, who we are, what everything is.
Yep.
I mean, that's not to minimize discoveries and very accurate models that predict what happens in our world and in the universe and all of that stuff, and the ability of us to come to our current level of useful information about what we think the universe and the world and everything is. But we don't know. We don't know how consciousness emerges.
But
Or
would you
like,
say there's a percentage of attempt or like are we close at least?
dude,
Or
I mean,
are
that
we
would
on
require
the journey?
that would require me to know the end point.
But you are a consciousness experiencing organism. So
I would hope that I would hope that I am.
let's say hypothetically you
Let's
are,
say
of
that
course.
I might be.
Let's say you might be.
Yeah.
You can attempt to understand what it is that you're going through and experiencing and what it is that you are,
Right.
and you might find answers. But I feel like there is an argument that we might be exploring here where actually all answers you find are not really answers. You just perceive them as answers at the moment because of the context
Yeah.
you're going through. But I mean, it's
Right.
all just mumbo jumbo. I don't know. I don't even know why I said
Yeah.
that.
I don't think I'm saying that it's all mumbo jumbo. I'm saying that there are so many questions that literally can't be answered. And maybe that's
Yeah.
me being like, maybe that's me saying like, oh, well, in the past, people said we'll never answer this, and then we answered it. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we did. We have really good ideas of how things work, but, or especially on the larger scale, like obviously, we talk about the idea of going quantum and then everything is just like what everything doesn't make sense again. But
We can only point to what the evidence highly suggests.
yes, exactly. And I mean, you can take it back to the conversation we had about the thing that you're always going to go back in time to figure out what started everything.
You can
And like
try.
everything. You can keep going backwards and it just becomes more and more hypothetical. But like how
Except if you get out, like outside the quote unquote universe or concept of what the universe is, or let's
yeah.
say multiverse,
Yeah.
like outside of that thing,
Yes.
now we have no context. That's why let's say most believers in creator or creationists or deists, like, I'm doing that again. I'm doing that.
Most people.
Okay, let me switch the framing. I'd say one
Yeah.
of the most common arguments that I've seen,
Yeah.
the no the mo
What's the idea?
the idea is that people argue, well, you can argue for a creator, and then people can say, well, who created the
That's
creator?
the yeah, we had a
Yes,
whole cast on
but
that.
okay, so the idea is that going behind a creator of the universe is actually totally um, what is the word here? Totally um,
Totally spies.
unsupported by logic. Unsupported by logic.
Of course.
Because
Yeah.
you have you have
Yes.
no supportive evidence.
Of
But
course.
the person who's claiming there's a creator to the creation has supportive evidence in evolution, in the causality law,
No, but
right?
no, we don't like just like you said, like if you go outside of our like we don't know how anything functions outside of our universe because we can't see that. So
Mm-hmm.
my statement
Mm-hmm.
is like
You can't know.
I can't even think of an advancement in technology that would ever get to a point where you could get outside of our universe and go back in time and try to figure out what
That is the great
like
mystery, of course.
so
What is
yes
beyond? What is beyond,
yes
right? And
so
what I mean, I guess if you have two categories is people who attempt to throw ideas and maybe some stick to the wall, and people
mhm.
who say like all is, come on, people, we just don't know, like all your attempts, you're clowns.
Yeah, I mean my point of
That's a
saying this
yeah, sorry.
my point of saying this was that that's the part of like nobody will know that. I mean I feel like I think that that's a
Mm-hmm.
fair statement to say like that's some things we won't know. We'll never know. And that's something that um yeah, I don't know. I guess that's I guess people face that, you know? People do face that.
And even if people are, let's say, completely convinced and they think they know, um, let me bring it to a more specific realm. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
Okay.
she I the title in Spanish is La muerte un amanecer. So
Yeah.
she's been working with terminal illness patients for, I guess, over 40 years or something. By now,
Mm-hmm.
probably way more. And she she's one of those highly um, with very good she's one of those individuals with very good credentials who are claiming that the probability that there's some experience after death is extremely likely. And this is, of course, very
What do you mean by
controversial.
some experience?
By some experience, I'm trying to leave it open,
Okay.
but something similar to life after death, right?
Okay.
Um, and or something similar to there. It's not a total game over.
And these are all claims from people who've been close and then come back, but they can't guarantee that it sustains that experience. And so
Exactly.
you're back at the
Uh huh.
beginning of saying like, oh well, you came back, so you don't know if
That's the
it's
controversy. Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, yes. But she's claiming this from a scientific standpoint, not based on the testimony of a single individual, but based on her experimentation and
But you can't
accounting
experiment.
of testimonies
You can't
throughout
experiment
her
on
whole
that.
career.
My point is that there's certain
Yes, it's
things that you can't.
documentation. It maybe is closer to not
Right.
experimentation. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, my claim was just that there's certain things that you cannot experiment on, and I don't think you ever will. And one of those is life after death, like honest life after death. You can't monitor somebody's conscious experience 20 years as they're dead and figure and see what's happened.
For
Like you just
sure.
can't. All
Yeah.
the best we could ever get is somebody who's like, oh, I got close and then I was brought back and this is what I saw, and then you like get lots of people. All that tells you is that maybe there's commonalities in the psyche that occur as you are dying,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
that doesn't tell you anything about life after death at all. And
It doesn't give
anything
you certainty at all about
there's no
anything.
certainty about that
Yes.
at all. And then
Agreed.
in the same way, I can't think of any kind of, and this is like us in 2021 trying to imagine future technology, but I just don't see that there's any way that we'll ever be able to go beyond the universe and go back in time enough to ever answer like there's certain questions we'll never
What?
answer.
Back in time to answer
Well,
questions? What do you mean?
we were talking about the beginning of the universe. So I'm saying there's
Sure.
certain
Okay.
questions we'll never answer, even if our
Okay.
technology
Okay.
gets better. That one of them is the beginning of the universe. One of them is life after death,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's these things that will just never be solved.
Maybe it's those mysteries that give meaning to, or are a big part in the supportive meaning that can be found here. No, those mysteries,
Maybe you would have to
they are
tell me
few.
how.
I mean, this is of course a debate we'll have to get into on another wave, but we've briefly exchanged arguments about the pragmatism surrounding awareness of death and mortality,
Yes.
and how useful it is to find meaning in mortality, etc.
Yeah, and I guess that's a big. I mean, that could be one of the examples. I mean, I'm trying to relate that quote to real life because I think it has a lot of meaning, but I've struggled to really put it into many examples that are practical examples in real life, and I suppose that's all I've been trying to do. I guess
Yeah, same.
the closest I've gotten to is is on a personal level noticing things that you could change that you don't, and I think the reason you don't is because it would mean you would have to accept discomfort, and you would have to change habits, and you would have to put energy into becoming something new, and that's hard, and that takes a lot of work. And so I think that that's the main example that I think fits the quote that works. And
Yeah.
and another one that you could talk about that the wave could go to is people don't acknowledge the fact that you're going to die all the time. You don't think about it. You kind of ignore it, and that's something that
And
most people don't face until it
exactly.
happens.
Most of the messages you're facing do not deal with that at all. Do not deal with um, the meaning surrounding that. It's mostly the opposite, like something around um, it's okay, why not? You can you can indulge in this. And that's why I brought up the triggers thing, equaling
Yeah.
also like the problem is not to find the answer, it is to face the answer. When you see a Coca-Cola ad, maybe
Yeah.
you get the craving and you know the answer is I don't want to go buy Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
um, but that you have to face that, and
Yeah.
facing that, like going through the craving, understanding that there's a programming, understanding that it's painful, etc., etc. Um, that's
Mm-hmm.
like, I think, even before the implementation of something that is like a big answer, like something like you should
Mm-hmm.
start meditating every day.
Mm-hmm.
You should face that answer, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can watch as many meditation videos as you want. But of course, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I think the trigger aspect is equally or even bigger
Mm-hmm.
right now because of all the what we talked about, the marketing aspect.
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with the idea of consumption versus productivity,
Hmm.
or the convo of consuming all
Yeah.
these things that are related to good things that you could be doing, but then you don't put things into practice. The idea of reading info and then not putting it into practice, or not putting the work into putting it into practice, is another avenue that we could go down.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Some other
uh,
time. That'll be
some other
plenty.
time. Thanks for the convo on
Thanks for the time.
42.
And see you on
See you on
43.
43.
All right.
Peace.
Peace out.